In this video, I thought I'd share my thoughts and impressions of this Stihl MS-261C. But before I do that, let's see this bad boy in action cutting through an 18-inch diameter cherry log. The result from that cherry tree and the sugar maples over the driveway, once they were all cut, split, stacked, is a little over 2 cords of firewood and just over 3 tanks of gas through the saw. The MS-261C is a professional series chainsaw. What I'm about to share in terms of my perspective is coming from farm and ranch saws. I've had a lot of experience using a Husqvarna 455, and so my experience with this saw is largely in comparison to my experience with the Husqvarna 455. So the big difference with the pro saw versus the farm and ranch saw is power to weight ratio, and that's really noticeable with this saw compared to my experience with the Husqvarna 455. This saw is almost 2 pounds lighter than that Husqvarna 455, and it packs about 15% more power. The 455 Rancher is right around 3.5 horsepower, whereas this saw is putting out 4 horsepower. Little less displacement at 50 cc's versus I think it's 55 on the Rancher, but the power more than makes up for it. This saw rips. It just doesn't slow down the way the 455 does. I'm running the same size bar on this as I've run on the Husky 455, and I assume that this Stihl farm and ranch saw is pretty similar. If you're pulling the chain on the 18-inch bar on the 455, it does tend to slow down, and I quite honestly don't understand why Husqvarna fits a 20-inch bar on that 455 and sells it that way. It just doesn't really have the oomph to pull that in large trees. Will it do the job? Absolutely, it will do the job. But if you're cutting bigger trees and you need that 20-inch bar and you're working the whole length of that bar, that saw is going to slow down because it slows down with the 18-inch bar. This one does not slow down anywhere near as much, even cutting red oak. I mean, you can see that going through the cherry. It's really tearing through it. Yes, it's a sharp chain. Yes, it's a newer chain and a newer bar, but it's not brand new. I've sharpened this chain several times. In fact, before cutting this cherry, I had used it on the field edges, and I had actually hit some old wire fence in a couple of trees and dinged up the chain pretty good and had to resharpen it. So it's not like it was a brand new chain here. This one has been through some work, and yet it still really cuts and rips through the wood, which I really appreciate about this saw. So lighter weight, more power, and it really cuts very well. So overall, I really like this saw. It's great to use and has great power. Looking more up close and personal at the saw itself, other features I like, these are quarter turn screws. So you just take your scrunch with the screwdriver and you turn that a quarter of the way and it pops open. So you just undo a few of those and you can get that cover off. You don't have to unthread a whole screw. This kill switch, you push up to kill the saw. You go down for the start position there and you have to squeeze the trigger to do that. So that's the start position. There's the run position, so it's already ready to restart, and then to shut it off, you end up pushing up to stop the saw. And so folks have said that's counterintuitive. It's opposite of a husky, yes, but I have not found that to be an issue at all, because your thumb's right here, you just flick up and it shuts off. No big deal. In terms of what I don't like, this entire handle is actually plastic, so as rugged as the housing is, having magnesium in it and everything, it's a full plastic handle. So far not an issue, but that's something that's potentially a little bit less durable. And I'm not 100% sold on these flip caps for the fueling either. I've seen that as a complaint about some Stihl saws. It hasn't been an issue for me, but I have seen complaints about that. It is nice that this tank is actually translucent, so you can kind of see how much gas is in there, whereas the whole body on the Husqvarna was orange, so you couldn't see that at all. Another thing with this saw that's nice is it's got an adjustable oiler. So it's down in here. There's a screw, so you can adjust the oiling. I have not adjusted it from the factory setting, but it's nice that you have that ability on the professional saw. This is a 50cc saw with compression release. You don't normally see that on saws this small. I've actually never used it, but I guess it's nice that it's there if you need it. I have no problem pulling this, and it starts pretty readily. There's no primer bulb. The Huskies tend to have a primer bulb here on the side that you can push. This does not have that, so it does generally take about 5 pulls to get it going, 4 to 5. But then it starts right up and it runs. Looking under the cowling, another big step up from the farm and ranch saw is the air filter here with the Pro Saw. Nice paper element here that you can clean and replace. This does have the electronic carburetor on this model, so it's self-adjusting. I have had no issues with that, but if anything ever did go wrong with it, it might require dealer service. The other thing here is this little cover. It's reversible, so in the wintertime you flip this around and then it puts an opening there which puts warm air from around the cylinder around the carburetor to heat the carburetor. So you do need to remember to change that when you're operating in the colder temperatures, to flip it around to let the warm air come and warm the carburetor and help that run a little bit more efficiently. So just a little nuance with the Stihl saw, so not something you necessarily would know off the bat, but in the manual it does tell you to make that swap. So at this point I've cut 6 or 7 cords of firewood with this saw, plus I've cleaned up field edges, cleaned up some trails, and done some other miscellaneous things with the saw, so I've run it quite a bit. since I've had it over the last 6 months, and I really like it. I'm not brand loyal or anything like that. I've got nothing against Husqvarnas or anything, but I do really think that for producing 5+ cord of firewood per year and cleaning up trails, roads, doing that kind of thing, stepping up to the Pro Saw was a really good decision. Yes, it costs about $200 more than a farm and ranch saw, but it's lighter and more powerful, and it performs really, really well. I really have appreciated that. The equivalent to this on the Husqvarna is the 550 XP. That I've heard things that suggest that might even be a superior saw, but they both punch at the same power and are really, really similar. They're the direct competitors. I went with the Stihl because there's a dealer 15 minutes from me, so really close by for parts and service, and that matters a lot. Otherwise, the saw's been great. I highly recommend this saw. I've got no affiliation with Stihl or Husqvarna or anybody. I just have this saw. I really like how it runs, and so I do recommend it. So hopefully you enjoyed seeing this saw in action and hearing some of my perspective about it. Again, it's a great saw, and it is a professional series chainsaw, which has been a really nice step up. And so if you're on the fence about professional versus a farm and ranch saw, I would encourage you, if you can, to take that step up into a Pro Saw. I don't think you'll regret it. Having used the farm and ranch, the Husky 455, this is a definite step above. And in my opinion, well worth it.